Is Ford and Farrell making a comeback? Is that old 10-12 combination going to be back in action at some point, building up to and maybe during the World Cup? Maybe. I think there's going to be a lot of eye rolling at this point, but just hold your horses there for a minute. This is a good thing to discuss. So get stuck in the comments. I'm Tim. This is Egg Chasers, and this is just me. This channel. I love my rugby, and I want to find other people that love rugby. So if you enjoy it too, and you want to get loads more content during the World Cup when I'll be out in France, and plenty more besides, hit subscribe, and like I say, leave your comments, because Charlie Morgan, brilliant journalist, writes for The Telegraph among other outlets. He posted online, as you can see, that in training for England, Ford and Farrell were seen in tandem. Quite an interesting development. Also worth pointing out as well that he says that Anthony Watson and Elliot Daly were also in that back line. Now, this is one little moment from one training session. We shouldn't necessarily read too much into what this means. However, it could also be significant. If that is the case, what do you make of it? What do you think? Because I'm okay with it. In fact, if you look at one of the comments underneath Charlie Morgan's tweet, it was pointed out, Cocker, that's me, has been calling this, and yes, I have. If you've been watching the videos for a while, you may remember on many occasions I've said it, but let me just refresh your memory. I know people want Ollie Lawrence at 12 or a proper 12. I get that, I do. But there is enough evidence that George Ford with Owen Farrell at 12 can work, and I don't think that's necessarily done yet. These are England's best two fly halves. And when they play together, they work beautifully. So I think there's still a valid argument, yes, for George Ford at 10 and Owen Farrell at 12, with, at the moment, Ollie Lawrence at 13. I think the choice is less, is it going to be Smith or Farrell at 10? Or even is it going to be Ford and Farrell at 10? I think is it going to be Henry Slade or George Ford? And those may be the two ways that England line up. Farrell, Lawrence, Slade, like we saw against Wales and Italy, or Ford, Farrell, Lawrence. It's a strange one, isn't it? The reaction that this gets I find it slightly odd, the reaction that Ford Farrell as a 10-12 combination gets. I think it became whipped up into something symbolic of Eddie Jones and how he frustrated the fans. People were desperate for Marcus Smith or desperate for a proper 12 and just didn't accept Ford Farrell as a combination. But let's just recap. They got to a World Cup final with Ford and Farrell. Won 3 Six Nations championships, including 1 Grand Slam, and equalled the world record number of test victories of any nation in the history of the sport. When you look back and looking at the context of the slim pickings that England have had since that, you can only come to the conclusion that it worked. Or at least, if you don't think it's the perfect solution, it worked a lot more than it didn't work. And I think what's happened in the last few months is that a lot of the people that used to give Owen Farrell stick, and I've always been a massive Owen Farrell fan, again, the videos demonstrate that, but Owen Farrell got so much unfair criticism and people were desperate for Marcus Smith. And then Marcus Smith got a go, and at international level, wasn't quite the Marcus Smith we see at club level, and suddenly people have quietened down about that and accepted that Owen Farrell is probably the best 10 in England. He may also be the best 12 in England, and there are reasons for that. And I did a video on the situation of the England 12 position and put a thesis forward as to why England don't seem to have any good 12s. And that's, in fact, I'll see if I can put a link to that video here, and so you can go and watch that. But Owen Farrell's the best 10 in England. He may well be the best 12. I'll leave that argument hanging out there. I'm not saying definitively he is. Ollie Lawrence has looked pretty good, although he was more a 13 that's moved into 12. Now, I can see this combination working. Will it be England's first choice? Maybe not. I think possibly Owen Farrell as the 10 will be England's first choice, but we need different ways to play. And I see George Ford as the number 2 fly half. I think it may well look like this. If Owen Farrell starts at 10, Marcus Smith will be on the bench. However, if Owen Farrell were to get injured, George Ford would become the starter. That's how I see it. And I think, so Owen Farrell 10 might be the first option, best option, but Ford and Farrell may be the alternative option. And I think there's massive merit in it for the reasons I've already discussed. And at least it's being tried, by the look of it, in training. So on that basis alone, I would love to know what you think. I'm a fan of it. I like it. I think it's worked. I think it gets best players on the pitch because George Ford is an incredible rugby player. And there are some of England's centres that either haven't been reliable for a number of reasons, like Manu Tuolangi, are currently injured, in the case of Ollie Lawrence, or aren't at peak form at the minute, like Henry Slade. So I think if Ollie Lawrence isn't available for the World Cup, and Manu Tuolangi, Henry Slade, Joe Marchant are your options, I think suddenly having Owen Farrell as an option at 12 comes right back into play again. Tell me what you think, though. I'll see you on the next video.